Hello everybody, welcome to today's show. My name is Spencer Walsh. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We got a great one for you as always. We start with some big news and a big win for Starbucks workers. They have won a union in a watershed vote. We'll get into all the details on that there. I believe right now 1 for 2, most likely, the odds are good that they will be going 2 for 3 by the end in terms of their unionized stores. Also going to update you on the Ghislane Maxwell trial taking place in New York. Gabriel Sherman has an article worryingly titled, "The Prosecution is Fumbling Its Case Against Ghislane Maxwell." We'll give you all the latest there. Also, a great piece by Sarah Jones continues to trigger people, make people pissed off, justifiably so. Hillary Clinton announces a masterclass in losing to Donald Trump. So haters are going to stay mad about that one, but that's going to be a great piece. So excited to read that one on the show. Also, Daily Show host Trevor Noah was blasted for knocking the Moderna CEO's vaccine push. Guys, is Trevor Noah a COVID denier? We will give you the full skinny on that. I know it's very scary. But, yeah, actually, one of the few actually interesting moments that I've seen from The Daily Show ever, really, since, Jon Stewart left. But either way, we are moving on. We start with the top Starbucks workers in Buffalo won a pretty big, really big union vote. After votes were counted on Thursday, part of the wave of labor activism sweeping the country in the midst of the pandemic. The Build Back Better project really has seen some pretty much, the what I feel like right now is when it comes to the union movement, we are kind of at the beginning of an ascent from the very bottom. This is the union labor movement in this country kind of pulling itself off of the floor and kind of getting up, and this is a perfect way to do it. So the cafe in Elmwood Village in Buffalo will be the only unionized location among the coffee's giant's 9,000 corporate-owned locations in the U.S. Baristas at the store voted 19-18 unionized despite months of opposition from the Seattle-based company. Senior executives and teams of managers spent weeks in Buffalo and held repeated meetings urging workers to reject the step. So, it's very, very interesting stuff. So, Howard Schultz, for example, this is back from the Washington Post here. Both of these articles are in the Washington Post, but this is from November 23rd. Earlier this month, Howard Schultz, the man who built Starbucks into a global giant, traveled into Buffalo for an unusual gathering of the company's employees. I remember it was all over Twitter. Special guest coming to the Starbucks Buffalo shop. Who could it be? Oh, it's Howard Schultz. He talked about growing up poor in Brooklyn and the values that guide Starbucks. Of course, the CEO here, I don't know if this was his exact interpretation, but he seems to think that, just his mere presence, he's the former CEO, by the way, actually, now that I think about it. He's a former CEO. They called him in off the bench. There's a new CEO, I believe, of Starbucks right now. And he talked about the values that guided Starbucks and guided him. Profit? No. It's much more than about coffee. It's about humanity, community, and love. Right as he finished, Gianna Reeve, a 20-year-old shift supervisor, stood up and introduced herself. She held in her hand a set of voluntary principles for a fair labor organizing program at the country. Schultz immediately left the room, escorted by a senior manager. So this is pretty much what Starbucks has been throwing at these workers. Just a meeting with Schultz where he comes down like the God from heaven and just guys, Starbucks, it's about community, love, family. As someone who's, probably been in a Starbucks way less than you have, or almost certainly been in a Starbucks way less than you have, especially over the past 2 or 3 years ever since he quit his job. And probably while he was CEO, by the way, at the time, I doubt he was hanging out at Starbucks all the time. So the face-off between Schultz, the 68-year-old billionaire, and Reeve, the college student who began working at Starbucks last year, is part of a showdown that will reverberate nationwide. Reeve is one of dozens of Starbucks employees attempting to form this union, and she did, obviously, she was right. She nailed it, and she is successful. So huge shout out to them. It really is some pretty crazy stuff. The employees are going to be joining Workers United, the Armed Service Employees International Union, the SEIU. So we are hoping it's going to be a transformative action for the industry, says Michelle Eisen, Starbucks barista who worked at the company for 11 years. It's an industry that deserves good working conditions and a livable wage, especially after the pandemic. Like the continued thriving of service industry work really does come down to if workers want to take the jobs, because the jobs have just fundamentally become undoable in American society today. They've been made so poor by both awful bosses and by just spoiled, entitled, rotten American customers. But the unions are definitely going to be a very welcome force to the equation here. The vote marks a victory for the labor movement at a time of increasing leverage for workers and growing support for unions. Nearly 70% of Americans now approve of unions, according to a Gallup survey conducted in August, the highest such figure in more than 50 years. Recent workers have witnessed a surge in unionization activities by warehouse workers, museum staffers, and university instructors. A lot of university instructors have been going on, graduate students all across the Boston area up here, all across the country, down in Columbia and NYU. Very, very interesting stuff going on there. A landmark effort to unionize an Amazon facility in Alabama failed last April, but federal regulators ordered a fresh election after the union challenged the result, and the NLRB declared it was rigged. So it's a pretty important thing to do, and then just to throw that by that little disclosure there. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post. Just put that in there real quick. So the newly formed union at Starbucks give organized labor a small presence in one of the best-known companies in the United States and a rare foothold in the fast food industry. In Buffalo, Starbucks employees say the working conditions in recent years, combined with the nationwide labor shortage, propelled them to act. Dozens of workers in the city joined the union organizing committee in August from across the city, bonded by grievances about understaffing, raises for long-serving employees, and safety measures during the pandemic. As the votes were tallied one by one on a video call, a dozen Starbucks workers in the union office linked arms and held hands. When they realized they had a majority of their votes at the first store, the workers, mostly in their 20s, jumped in the air, screamed with relief and hug, and several broke into tears. Although the number of employees involved in the Starbucks unionization vote is small, the trailblazing nature of the effort, the fact that it's never happened in this way, this place, at this time before, makes it a very big deal, says Wilma Liebman, a former chairwoman of the NLRB. Of course, winning is contagious, It's got to be a pretty good feeling, though. Huge shout out. Huge shout out to all the people. Love to see success in the labor movement. Just got to be way more fulfilling than anything happening kind of the electoral sphere right now. That is for sure. All right, let's move on to another big story. Taking a trip over to New York, Manhattan, where Ghislane Maxwell is on trial. Gabriel Sherman covering it for us in the Vanity Fair. Personally, this has always been a very interesting trial for me. Obviously, if you are unaware, Ghislane Maxwell is the kind of close confidant in many ways to Jeffrey Epstein, the child pedophile and kind of sex trafficker, very much tied to two presidents, one prince, multiple prime ministers, representatives, all that stuff. Famously, quote unquote, committed suicide. And now they found his pretty much number two, Ghislane Maxwell, who's on trial, and they are trying to put her away. So Ghislane Maxwell, she's on trial. The case has always been about more than her. And seeking to put the disgraced British heiress behind bars for a possible 80 years, prosecutors are aiming to redress the serial failures in justice system to punish the crimes of her partner, late pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, which is why it's shocking and tragic. The prosecution's case against Maxwell appears far weaker than many people expected. The list of prosecutorial missteps is long. Victims have appeared unprepared for cross-examination. High-profile co-conspirators have not yet been called to testify about Maxwell's alleged role in Epstein's child sex trafficking operation. And on Tuesday, prosecutors stunned reporters at the rest of the courthouse viewing room by announcing the government intends to rest its case before Friday, weeks earlier than anticipated. It all raises a painful question. Will Maxwell go free? So a lot of stuff causing a lot of doubt on the prosecution team, the team trying to put Epstein's number two away here. really interesting stuff here. They're definitely making a very narrow case from what I've heard. Probably, to be honest, I've not been following the Sherman beat on this. I've been following the kind of a TrueNon beat, if you want to, personally, that's my number one go-to, the TrueNon podcast, covering this stuff every day. But, Gabriel Sherman also always good to see what he has to say. For the trial, I counted myself among the pessimists who expect the case will not provide a full accounting of Epstein's alleged crimes or expose the powerful men that allegedly participated in his depraved lifestyle. My view held throughout the trial. I was dismayed, for instance, that prosecutor Lara Pomerantz's opening statement ran a short 35 minutes, roughly 10 minutes less than the government's opening argument in the Elizabeth Holmes fraud trial. For comparison, I was also underwhelmed that prosecutors didn't first call an alleged victim as their witness and let off with Epstein's pilot Larry Vysotsky. The perception in the viewing room is that Vysotsky testified more like a defense witness, claiming he never saw sex with underage girls or sexual activity on Epstein's planes. Testimony from Maxwell's alleged victims has also been very harrowing. On Tuesday, the third accuser that Epstein sexually abused testified that Epstein sexually abused her more than 100 times, starting when she was 14 years old. So just absolutely horrible stuff to hear about, and probably going to be pretty damn impactful, I hope, at least, for the jury. She was identified just by her first name, Carolyn, and she recounted that Maxwell often scheduled her massages with Epstein and once groped her while she was naked, and she had a great body for Epstein and his friends. That's what Maxwell had said of Carolyn, who started this relationship when she was just 14. So very, very disturbing stuff there. Unfortunately, prosecutors did not follow up and ask Carolyn to name Epstein's friends, which is pretty crazy. So it's a great body for Mr. Epstein and his friends. So who are these friends? But there has been a little bit of, a legal disagreement because, of course, the charges they have to produce, there is, the grooming definition, what they have to prove, that is not so, unfortunately, that is not as, well ironed out, the legal definition of grooming, as it should be. So that is a big reason why they can't, really, and of course, it's not that surprising. And again, it's not that surprising that in, people like, Glenn Dubin and all those Leon Black and all those financiers that had to be fired, and his quote-unquote friends were not able to brought in, but it also could risk kind of like widening the case too much and forcing them to prove too many things that they can't prove. So that could be a bit of a strategy there. I'm not entirely sure. So Carolyn's gut-wrenching testimony was also undermined by a seeming lack of preparation by the prosecution. Under cross-examination, one of Maxwell's lawyers, Jeffrey Pagliuca, noted inconsistencies in Carolyn's prior comments on the case. Pagliuca noted that Carolyn did not mention Maxwell's name once during a first interview with the FBI in 2007. Neither did Carolyn include Maxwell's name in subsequent lawsuits she filed against Epstein and her alleged co-conspirator, Sarah Kellen. Here's how one tense exchange unfolded. So this is the lawyer. Your two lawsuits involving Epstein and Sarah Kellen say nothing about Miss Maxwell, correct? Carolyn, correct. The lawyer again. Your deposition testimony in 2009 says nothing about Miss Maxwell other than two words that Miss Comey read, correct? Carolyn, correct. But yeah, fun fact, James Comey's daughter is the one, I believe, on the prosecution, which is interesting. Of course, the absence of Maxwell's name does not mean Carolyn's story isn't true. Victims of sexual abuse and rape often change their stories as they process their trauma. The fact is often spun by defense lawyers who have been really, really brutal by all accounts on this, like trying to have it every single which way, painting these people as, the girls involved here as kind of, money grubbing, asking for it, trying to get something out of their, career, but also being like, we never really did this. It wasn't, just trying to have it throwing everything in the kitchen sink at the situation here. But, it is true. It's definitely true that a victim's sexual abuse or rape will change their stories as they process the trauma or remember things, differently. It's an incredibly traumatic time. You're not taking down everything you see there by any stretch, but prosecutors should have prepared Carolyn to address the issue head on. A similar dynamic played out last week during the testimony of a victim identified as Jane. Another Maxwell lawyer, Laura Menninger, pressed Jane to comment on why her testimony rattled on why her testimony differed from her prior interviews with the FBI. So pretty much they did not prepare their witnesses for these kind of inconsistency questions. And James seemed rattled by the questions, at one point alleging the FBI incorrectly transcribed her comments. On Tuesday, the government suffered another embarrassing setback when Maxwell's defense revealed that Jane called her brother, who was also a government witness, and complained about the cross-examination. That's a possible violation of the judge's rules. Now her brother will no longer testify. Not good. So that is not something you exactly want to hear by any stretch. So the weakest plank in the prosecution's case has been lack of testimony from Epstein's innermost circle. Prosecutors have not called Epstein's highest profile accuser, Virginia Roberts Giuffre, to the stand, even though her name has been mentioned numerous times by other witnesses. And Virginia Roberts Giuffre, probably the most prominent, one of the most original Epstein accusers, was brave enough to go on TV, put her story out there in public, and really, bring original awareness to the situation 2 years ago when this was really kind of getting big. Meanwhile, Epstein's controversial 2007 agreement listed 4 alleged co-conspirators: Sarah Callan, Adriana Ross, Leslie Roth, and Nadia Marchinkova. So Maxwell's name was not included in that one. These women conceivably could testify about Maxwell's role in the alleged sex trafficking operation, but why didn't the government gain their cooperation against Maxwell here? And if the women didn't cooperate, why didn't the government charge them too? The women have denied any allegations possible. The government may call one or more before resting. Of course, it's impossible to predict how the members of the jury will rule, especially since cameras in the viewing room don't show their faces. But given the stakes of the trial, the government surely hoped for an open and shut case. They had more than 500 days to prepare for one, and they haven't. So Gabriel Sherman there in the Vanity Fair with a pretty searing indictment of the prosecution. Hopefully he is wrong there, and hopefully they're just trying to stick to that strategy. But it's it was from the jump here. It was going to be really, really hard to imagine somebody like and I very much think like this is the kind of a Derek Chauvin case where it just be like break people's brains maybe a little bit too much if Ghislane Maxwell got off, but it's certainly possible. Who knows? It's certainly possible. It is certainly possible that Ghislane Maxwell gets off here. But I think it is hard to imagine, at least at this point, just given what we know, given my at least worldview, it's very, very hard to imagine people like Bill Clinton, Jeffrey Epstein, or not Bill Clinton, but any level of high, even co-conspirator, one that would actually be in a position of power, committed these crimes. Those people would be, I think, very, very kind of hard pressed and kind of nowhere near the stand. They would be kept well away from this situation. All right, so let's get into our next story. We will do such a thing in just a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, we have so many fun things to report here at the Spencer Walsh Radio Network that you're going to want to tune into. First and foremost, we have Newsflash, our flagship show, which will be on every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, wherever you get your podcasts, of course. And now, for the first time ever, we have the Spencer Walsh Show in a rare collaboration and syndication with WMFO 91.5 in Somerville and Medford. It'll be on the air there first and live, 1 to 2 p.m. every single Monday. And from there, we'll put it on SD Run podcast feed within 24 hours. That's the lineup. Just keep listening to the Spencer Walsh Radio Network, wherever you get your podcasts. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's always fun, this stories like these. I love doing these. But yeah, Sarah Jones, who's a writer for the New York Magazine, she was tweeting a little bit about Hillary Clinton and just like the level of vitriol that she kind of wrote about here, which is or received here for just this tweet. And yeah, and I like responded to something here because I'm always about this kind of Hillary I'm always following the Hillary situation. But yeah, blogging about Hillary, she writes, she tweets, but then she obviously, Lord forgive me, it's time to go back to that. Oh me, we're back on it. 2016 will never end. Folks, that is for sure. The title of this article here, Hillary announces masterclass in losing to Trump. The top reply here is from some guy named Dan Walden, writing, it's always lovely to take a break from work and read something brief, slightly caustic, and blessedly sane. That's nice. But the next one is, sorry, you're so angry and jealous. Yeah, that's very, very funny. Very, very funny stuff here. The Hillary cult was out really in full force around this situation. I like replied somewhere in that tweet, and then I got even some heat for daring to talk about Hillary in a negative way. Even still, after all these years, it's just absolutely crazy. The few people that have a really, really just deep and unrelenting admiration for this guy, for this gal. Anyway, so I wrote in response to these kind of the vitriol, and all the people who are these Kamala Harris supporters, these very hardcore Democrats. I wrote, the response to this prove what Hillary's people said about Bernie Bros was projection, and then I said, and then someone else said, what's stupider than a Bernie Bro who doesn't even live in this country? I don't know where they got that impression from. And then I just wrote back to you. So, and then, yeah, anyway, so let's see what Hillary's up to. So spend any amount of time, on social media here. You're probably seeing that masterclass ad, right? Someone like Bill Nye, Margaret Atwood, some pretty cool stuff. Like, some of these possibilities could be, like, pretty tempting, I would like to learn how to write from Margaret Atwood, or study science with Bill Nye. That's some pretty cool stuff, They used to be around a lot more, but they've just come out with a new series, literally what I call the Murderer's Row, because it's Bill, Hillary, Margaret Atwood, and not Margaret Atwood. I'm blanking on her name, but this lady who is very tied to the Clintons as, I believe, Secretary of State or some major diplomat, and also Condoleezza Rice are doing a joint one. So anyway, on December 9th, Hillary Clinton will begin teaching a new masterclass on the power of resilience. To mark the occasion, she read what would have been her 2016 acceptance speech in a class excerpt that aired on the Today Show this morning. So they got that all out there. And, first of all, it has to be a little bit of a cell phone. Just like, again, going through the last 4 years, just fantasizing, just still in your head, still clearly have not gone over your just internal shame, internal self-embarrassment, justifiably so, that you lost to Donald Trump. And, like, this is just such a incredibly kind of funny way to go about it. The classic gripe about Hillary was like, oh, she's measuring the White House drapes. She can't wait to get in there. And of course she already wrote her acceptance speech. Of course she probably did not even write a concession. She definitely did not write a concession speech. But yeah, here she is. Without further ado, this is her tweet. I'm excited to invite you to join my new masterclass. I'll be teaching the skills I developed throughout my career, the challenges, the triumphs, and all the rest.
This was what I intended to say if I had been elected in 2016.
And when she wrote that,
my
she was probably
Americans,
like 5 months before.
Today you sent a message to the whole world.
Okay, so that was not very, it's very, not giving you too much there, but so see if we can find the full excerpt in a second. Just get a better clip for you, just get the sense of what's going on. This is Hillary, all right, so yeah, here it is. This is Hillary Rodham Clinton teaches the power of resiliency, and I do feel like they're kind of like running out of ideas at this point, because like, if you think about it, like, resiliency, that's, I don't think that's kind of innate, like, I almost feel like, but, like, for example, they got, like, this is her reading the acceptance speech that I'm about to play, but then right on the other side, I see Lewis Hamilton teaches a winning mindset, like, that's really cool, but anyway, this is it.
I'm going to share with you what I intended to say if I had been elected in 2016. My fellow Americans, today you sent a message to the whole world. Everybody will be knocked down. The question is, will you get back up?
Yeah, that's a good question, Hillary. I never heard that one before. Oh, Madeleine Albright was...
I want to share my life lessons with the hope that it might help you as you navigate your own life.
Meet your new instructor.
I made so many gaffes and mistakes. There are steps you can take to build confidence in yourself, to begin to trust yourself about the decisions you will make. This class is for anyone at any age who wants to think about building a life of meaning and purpose, of having a mission that captures what you're willing to stand up for. Everyone, every one of you has the ability to be resilient. I've been, reduced to tears. I've been frustrated beyond words, but...
All right, yeah, so we don't get to see the full speech yet. You got to go pay $1 gazillion for that on Masterclass. But, yeah, that other lady, by the way, who they're putting in this literal, 100% war criminal lineup. We got Bill and Hillary Clinton, Condoleezza Rice, famous for the Iraq War and all that stuff, working in the Bush first term to kind of perpetrate that, and Madeleine Albright, who very famously said, talking about the Iraq War, so Leslie Stahl on U.S. sanctions against Iraq, which I think largely were part of the Bill Clinton regime. Leslie Stahl, this was in 1996. We've heard that 500,000 children have died. That's more children than died in Hiroshima. And the price is worth it. That's the question. Is the price worth it? She asked to Leslie Stahl. And then Madeleine Albright, this person who we're going to learn God knows what from in Masterclass. I think this is a very hard choice, but we think the price is worth it. So, if you don't go to hell for that kind of quote and pushing through on that kind of policy, I don't know what gets you there. All right. So, yeah. So, pretty much all she says in this this speech here, my fellow Americans, today you send a message to the world. Our values endure. Our democracy stands strong, and our motto remains e pluribus unum out of many one. Our values are fit for garbage. Fit for the rats. The fact that put Trump in the White House for 4 long years. And Hillary, that's why you didn't read that speech. Look, my firm conviction that this country is a horror probably bars me from any kind of public office. Nevertheless, I maintain that Clinton's inability to account for America's basic nastiness is partly what cost her the presidency. So what's she going to do now? Teach a masterclass in losing? Clinton's masterclass isn't out yet, and I plan on resisting any editorial scheme that would put me through the tortures of seeing it. Lest anyone think I'm too harsh on Clinton here, let me say that I will not sit through any masterclass taught by any instructor for any sum less than the total of my student loan debt. So, in absence of any further information, I have questions. What is masterclass exactly, and how are they bribing celebrities to get involved? Why would Clinton do this? Which is probably a fair question. She has everything she wants. Chappaqua is she's in Chappaqua vibing. Those flowers in the garden look nice. What is the point of reading this speech that you never got to read because you lost to Donald Trump in probably one of the most embarrassing showings in human history? I mean, it's just, I don't get it. I just do not get it. Why is her lecherous husband involved too? That's a very good point. And you can take a class from Bill, by the way, on the subject of leadership beginning December 16th. I think Madeleine Albright's class must be on how to tell if the price is worth it. There's probably a pretty small constituency for this class. The members live on Twitter. But they were bay from my head the moment they read this headline. That's fine. Like Hillary, I'm resilient. Masterclass, give me a call. That's Sarah Jones there writing pretty funnily as always, talking about the standard, just kind of the way things are with Hillary, and she's always been so special. We love our Hillary, don't we? Anyway, let's get to our last story of the day in just 20 seconds.
Buckingham Palace has announced the death of His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh.
It's news flash.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. We're talking a bit about Trevor Noah. So first, let's take a look at see if you can find objectionable here in this clip.
On the one hand, almost all the Omicron cases have been mild so far. But on the other hand, the guy who stands to gain millions of dollars from new vaccines says we need new vaccines. If we don't make a new vaccine, this disease could be with us forever. Sorry, I was thinking of something else. Now look, I'm not saying that the CEO of Moderna is lying. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying I don't think he's the most objective source on this topic. I'll wait to hear what neutral experts say about a new vaccine. People like public health officials or the CEO of Johnson & Johnson. I mean, he's got nothing to gain because nobody's going to buy his vaccines either way, so I trust him.
Yeah, so that to me, that is how you're supposed to, do late night comedy. Like, you're, kind of going after an enemy that not a lot of people would, normally go after, but, it's kind of like you think about it, it makes sense, and, people laugh. Vaccine companies, anything to do with the vaccine, anyway, attacking the vaccine at all has been really, I think, slandered to a bit of an, it's, obviously everyone should get their vaccine, but I think, a lot of, especially the reaction to this kind of comment, which I think is pretty much exactly my position and exactly right, is really disturbing and, kind of bad. So this is in the New York Post, writing, Hannah Sparks here. No one's laughing at the Daily Show host Trevor Noah's new take on coronavirus vaccine maker Moderna. False. I am laughing. The late night comedian appears to be suspicious of Moderna CEO Stéphane Bancel, who recently went public with concerns over how well his vaccine will hold up against the new Omicron variant. No one questioned Bancel's intentions, as he alleges that the pharma boss may not be the most objective source for the pandemic predictions. Again, not saying that, he's lying, he wants to kill us all for profit or something like, any kind of, crazy thing like that. But no, literally, all he said was, he may not be the most objective source, and these people lose it. So Noah questioned Bancel's intentions here. As a parody of Bancel, Noah mocked, if we don't make the vaccine forever, saying these quotes, some viewers were evidently incensed, not at the thought of padding Bancel's wallet, but of Noah's cynicism. Said one Twitter user, "This seems to be spreading the anti-vax point of view." Others, though, appeared to be in full accord, though perhaps not the sort that Noah had intended. As one skeptic pointed out, "Holy cow, you guys can see it." Pfizer CEO also said we need a vaccine every year. Raphael Shmunov, who's a kind of big leftist tweeter, tweeting, "To all the COVID idiots who think this means Trevor Noah has joined your death cult, you can be suspicious of Big Pharma and believe in vaccines and science, just like you can be suspicious of Big Tech while using your phone to read this," which is it's a great point. Vaccines are a wonderful, largely publicly funded technology that has been absolutely instrumental, and you should use as much as you can when you are trying to not have COVID. It's very, very effective by all accounts at not giving people COVID. So you should go get the vaccine. But there is no world in which it's sensible or in any way smart or morally correct to not look at the fact that, hey, we are having these boosters. These boosters are not entirely scientifically justified. There's a lot we don't know about the Omicron variant, and we really need to look at the profit motive for the fact that these people are so hesitant to want to give vaccines to the third world, to people who have gotten zilch, but they are all way too happy to keep pushing it on the West and keeping this pandemic going for as long as possible. It makes a lot of sense. It's the Trevor Noah comments and the Raphael Shmunov comments, they really go well together. It was earlier this week that Bancel confessed fears of a material drop in COVID-19 vaccine efficacy against newer strains of the disease, such as the Omicron variant, which have been detected in more than 30 countries so far. including 10 reported cases throughout 5 states, including New York as of Friday, according to multiple state health officials. There's no world, I think, where the effectiveness is the same level as we had with Delta, he told the Financial Times. But again, is going to be something that I would not look to any vaccines, Theo, for better understanding on this. All right. We'll be back on Tuesday. Thank you so much. We'll see you then.